Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Find Me Project and podcast. My name is Mark, and I want to first start out by saying thank you to all of our audience. We have been able to grow this podcast and show to over 30,000 people, and that really helps drive awareness and visibility to the missing person cases that we help with. Today's episode, we are going to have Silvia share what it means and what it takes to really be a leader and how a background in sports can actually really help with that. This was an episode that was recently recorded here in studio and was shared with our internal team. We have a lot of people who are in the military, they're veterans, they're athletes, they're very active, many of which are leaders in their respective field. And I think this episode will really help, not only with any of our internal community that may not have listened to it, but honestly with everybody else as well, right? We try to really focus on doing a wide array of episodes and interviews here with the Find Me podcast. We do obviously want to spotlight more missing person cases. Here lately we have been really, really busy on enhancing our existing and new technology. We've been doing a lot of development work, development work around things like our Nexus investigative intelligence software and a bunch of new things that, we're going to get to use as we get ready to move into this upcoming search season. Now, with that being said, I do want to make a big announcement, and that's with Operation Rising Tide. Rising Tide is our underwater search tour that is going to begin here very soon. We're going to primarily focus in on North Carolina and the surrounding region. We'll be taking our sonar and dive boat out to different locations, different cities. We'll be doing some scuba diving and other underwater search techniques. So, we'll definitely have more, to come here very shortly as it relates to that. As far as missing person cases go, our team has been steady working past cases, reviewing new cases, offering our intelligence and search capabilities where we can, right? So, as far as the podcast goes, our internal team has been sitting down to determine the best way to continue to move forward with this podcast. As I do understand that it has grown, and we want to make sure that we're doing everything right and offering tremendous value to the missing person cases that we are reviewing, as well as the families, law enforcement, the community that we're serving as part of this process as well. So, again, I just want to say thank you to everybody. Thank you for your patience. I'm going to actually now go ahead and start today's interview with Silvia.
A mission with purpose to find the missing using the power of social networking and cutting-edge technology. We're military veterans, technologists, scuba divers, and relentless seekers. From deep forests to sunken vehicles, from silence to signal, every clue matters. If you've ever felt the call to stand for something greater, this is your moment. This is the Find Me Project.
Well, Silvia, I want to tell you that I have been looking forward to this conversation now for a long time, since we booked it, really, because I find the world of high performance and operating in a high stake environment fascinating, especially from the lens of pushing your limitations and trying to find out what you're truly capable of. I think when you do that, there's so many positive things that can come both personally and professionally. And I think a lot of people are not choosing to challenge themselves and wanting to live a comfortable lifestyle. So I'm curious, from what you see, are you finding that a lot of people are choosing not to challenge themselves? And why do you think that pushing your limitations, finding out what you're capable of, is so important?
Well, I do notice that a lot of people are just more comfortable staying on their comfort zone. But thanks to the high sport environment in which I grew up and I'm still living in, I was used since I was a teenager, just to level up every time. And it's something that stay in your comfort zone as something that is not in my blood, and I highly recommend it to anyone just to push their own limits, which doesn't mean that you have to go through anything, but just step up a little bit, just step by step, and so you can understand your limits, which are then your skills and your abilities. Because I do believe that we are, all have potentials that sometimes we cannot see. And so if we are not surrounded by people that can trust ourselves enough just to push us to go through new challenges, then it's our duty, in my opinion, just to step up a little bit.
You know, you said the word potential, and I actually want to go back to that for a moment, because one of the questions that I was really curious to ask you is, do you think that there is a difference between an average person and the 1%? When I say 1%, I'm talking about somebody that's operating at a completely different level. They're at, an elite level at whatever it is that they're doing, both personal and professional. And then the second part to that question, do you believe that everybody has something deep down inside of them that
Yes, I
allows them to
strongly,
get to that elite level?
yeah, I strongly believe that. I strongly believe that all of us has something inside, and we all have different potentials. And I really believe that in different circumstances, in different way of working or whatever, we all have our potentials. But as I said previously, uh, not everyone is able to see them. So also, I don't know. I was talking about maybe in a team, you don't always have a leader that is believing to all the members of your team, but it's the ability of a leader just to put each member on a path where they can see by themselves their potential and their abilities. And then it's something different. Then they have to decide by themselves if they want to pursue that path and that the new challenges. But I do believe that we all have strong potentials. But yeah, someone is not able to see it.
That's really good advice, and I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people that are listening and or watching this. Um, Now, this conversation that we're going to have today is really for anybody that, I think is right now feeling like they're living an average lifestyle, again, whether personally or professionally, and you want to break into that elite category. Also, I think this is going to be a great conversation for any type of leader who is operating in any type of chaotic environment. A lot of what we're going to talk about, I think you're going to be able to take a lot of knowledge away from that. Before we get into that, though, Silvia, I'd like to give you a proper introduction, if that's okay.
Yeah, great.
Okay. So, Silvia Rizzo, you work in high performance environments across sport and business, focusing on leadership and decision making under pressure. Your background is in elite sports, where you have spent years working with performance, error management, and mental resilience in real world, high stakes situations. I actually want to go back. So, in the very beginning, when we started talking, you had mentioned how you have always been involved in sports. If we could actually go back to your childhood, what type of sports did you play throughout your early childhood?
I have to be honest, I tried anything, any kind of sport, I tried. But in some I could succeed, in others, no, I just failed. So I just went on. And I have to be honest that I'm a professional dressage rider, horse rider. And horse riding was one of the last sport that I tried. But because there is a connection with the animals, and I really like and love animals, so this is something that it was my passion, which I turned into my work. So yes, I tried any kind of sport.
Yeah, that's cool to hear. So, I think, for any parents that are listening, I'm actually always interested to talk with professional athletes. When you look at your childhood, your parents specifically, did they constantly try to reinforce, hey, you need to be challenging yourself, you need to be pushing your limitations? Or did they sort of back off and take the approach of just telling you and giving you advice of, hey, just go out there and try your best, and, have fun doing it? How did your parents, what approach did they take?
Um, they never pushed me to do anything. They just offered me the possibility to try tennis, swimming, diving, skiing, everything. But they always let me to do what I liked and stop anytime I didn't like anymore. I have to say that I had, and I have still a big example in my life, which is my father, and he never told me anything. It was enough for me to watch at him, look at him, and he is the kind of man that is always challenging himself. And anytime that he reached the goal, he just level up. So this is the way in which I grew up, and this is my mantra. Anytime that I reach a goal, I just step up and I want to level up.
Sounds like you had an incredible role model in your life.
Yeah. Yes, I do.
So you spoke on how you're a professional horse rider. Before we dive into that, any other sports or activities kind of in the adventure or extreme sport category that you like doing?
Well, I ride motorbikes, and a completely opposite. I was a classical ballet dancer for 7 years, so completely different worlds, which I really like. And I did scuba diving, which I also really like, but it was not something that I was moved to a strong passion like it was with horses.
Yeah. How long have you? So do you still scuba dive?
Like 4 years, but I was
Okay.
doing only in the summer, so not something constantly.
Yeah, I'm a huge scuba diver. I love it.
Ah,
I still do it to this day. So I was saying, maybe we could hopefully link up. But I have also found, so scuba diving is great, but it's not, so one of the things that I kind of wanted to talk to you about to see if you experience this, I'm certainly sure you do, because I've seen some of the content that you're putting out there and it's amazing. I mean, you just have so much energy, and the vibe you're giving off is amazing. But, so I saw some of the content with motorcycle riding. So, what I find, whenever I do what I'm going to reference as an extreme sport or some type of activity that's making me push my limits, where you're walking that gray line where the risk is fairly high. If you mess up, you may not come back from it, right? Rock climbing, whatever it is. But when I'm in those moments, I achieve what I like to call the flow state, right? Where I have such clarity of mind. I don't have brain fog. I'm able to think 3 to 4 steps ahead. And everything that I learn in those moments, I'm able to directly apply to my personal and professional life. So, when you think about professional horse riding, motorcycles, do you also find that flow state?
yes, absolutely. Because also, if you think, whenever I ride, which is a bike or a horse, I'm always focused. But it's not something that I have to concentrate in particular way in order to be focused. It's something that is natural. Also, because if we are talking also, think about a horse. It's an alive animal, 700 kilos you have to deal with. And, anything can happen in the surround. So the horse can be spooky, the environment can change immediately. And this is something that you have always to be aware of. And you have just few seconds in order to decide what to do or what not to do. And the same is when we drive a car or when we are on a motorbike. And I think it's something that it's natural in a sense, in a kind of way.
So talk to me about horse riding. It's such, I don't know anything about it. It's such a fascinating sport and discipline. I know you started early on, but what does it feel like when you're riding a horse, competing in an event, the crowd is screaming? Can you sort of walk us through what you're feeling?
I mean, it's something unique. It's I really like also to compete because I am moved by adrenaline. I love to feel the adrenaline. And when you are in the arena and you have all the crowd around and they start clapping, and it's something unique, really. Also, now that I'm talking about, I really can feel it in my body because it's yeah, you are in a stadium and you are in the middle of the stadium with your horse, and you have all these people around and they're just watching you. So you are under the eyes of a lot of people, so all the mistakes are visible if they are going to happen. And all your performance is visible under the eyes of a lot of people. So it's it's really something, yeah, that is giving me a lot of power to to have a good result. Because yeah, I always I'm always moved by the thing that I want to have a good result in anything I do with the horses and with my work as well.
Yeah, I can just tell by you talking about it. I mean, you're glowing, when you talk about it. So, I mean, it's really cool to see. You're very passionate about it, obviously. We've sort of already talked about this a little bit in the beginning, but maybe you can expand upon it a little further. So, when you talk about everything that you learn when you're out there racing, training on a horse, for those that don't ride horses, you can think of any sport that you're doing, right? It could be soccer, surfing, rock climbing, anything that you're doing. And then you translate that over to your professional life in business or whatever it is that you do. How valuable are those lessons that you're learning? And how does it impact your professional life?
Well, let's say that riding horses and running my company is something that is going along together. So the same motivation that I have when I'm riding a horse is exactly the same when I run my company. You asked me what I've learned. What I've learned. You know, During my entire life, I put together all the experience that I faced, all the experience that I could live. I put all together, also the mistakes that I've done. I put all together, and I built a structure, a solid structure, which is done also by my values and solid fundamentals to which I can rely on anytime I'm doing anything, anytime I have to take a decision, anytime that I make a mistake, because I'm human and we are all human, so we make mistakes. But yeah, it's important to me to have this structure to which I can rely on anytime I need to do something.
Yeah.
So this is something that I built up over the years, and it's something that we all have done through our
Yeah.
entire life. So if we put all together, then we can rely on something, and then we are not confused anymore, and we can proceed.
Yeah, that's really valuable information. Thanks for sharing it. So, you talk about your company. What exactly does your company do?
Well, I do a lot of things in my company because the part is, of course, related to the horses, so training, selling horses, and training people and stuff like that. Uh, and next to this, I do branding project. I develop a project with fashion brands or sport brands. I do life coaching. I do a lot of things, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, so that's actually a good segue into the life coaching, right? Because I think a lot of people are going to listen to this who are professionals, or maybe, they feel like they're living that average lifestyle and they want to promote themselves up, if you will, to that, next level. So from your perspective, through your life coaching and business, what would you say the biggest difference you see between leadership in elite sports and leadership in businesses?
That's a good question. And, you know, I honestly think that I have the same kind of leadership in sport and in business. Because for me, leadership is the ability of being able to adapt yourself to any new circumstances. So that's related to uh, any kind of work, to any kind of sport, and to the life.
Yeah. And, one of the things I actually notice quite a bit is you can tell, right? So you can tell if, let's say a person has worked their way into a leadership position, but they've never truly been challenged or tested. It's so easy to tell that. And oftentimes, because they're not constantly trying to challenge themselves, when they're put in that chaotic situation, they almost do everything that they can to divert the authority or responsibility, versus somebody who has tested themselves, knows what they're capable of. And I call it the "you're it" factor, right? So when chaos or something happens and everybody turns to you and says, "Hey, Sylvia, you're it, we need you to lead us out of this event," again, fill in the blank, whatever it is, you know what your worth is, you know what your capability is, and you're going to execute on that, um, very quickly. One of the questions that we actually submitted out to our audience, and I've sort of modified it once I got it back here. I want to read it to you if that is okay with you.
Mhm.
Um, how do people make good decisions when information is incomplete or the timing just doesn't seem right?
Well, we have to accept the fact that we will never have any kind of entire and complete information about anything. You know, life is unpredictable. Any kind of decision we are going to take is uncertain because, yes, we can maybe have a hope that something is going to be like we want, but anything can jump into the middle, so anything can happen. So first of all, we have all to accept the fact that we can't have all the informations when we are going to take a decision. Another thing that we have to accept before taking a decision is the trade-off. So anytime we take a decision, we have to accept the fact that we postpone or we put aside something else. So we are going to stay focused on the decision that we are going to take. So this is where the structure that I was talking about earlier is coming into. Because as soon as I have the structure to which I can rely on, I know how I can behave, how I can direct myself and my decision. So there are certain circumstances in which we have to take decision in seconds, and there are other circumstances in which we can take our time and then reset, and then we can go on. But as soon as we have clear our structure, we can face any kind of circumstances, is any kind of new things that life is going to face us, or yeah, that suddenly, all of a sudden, something can change. But if we are ready, because we have built this kind of structure, then we are ready to face anything.
So, do you think, in your opinion, do you think pressure can actually improve performance?
Pressure is not an enemy. Pressure is something that reveals who you are, honestly. Because pressure is something that for someone it's good to have pressure because it's giving more motivation, more power, more pushing to go through. For someone else, can be a little bit weird or maybe can create a little bit of chaos. But as soon as you can see pressure as something that reveals your structure, your way of thinking, your way of working, then you're not going to be afraid of that. Because some people can think about that, pressure maybe can create a mistake. No, it doesn't. A mistake can always happen, absolutely. But it's our ability how to handle the mistake when the mistake is going to happen.
Gosh, that's such good advice. And, that sort of segues into a question I was just thinking about. So I think a lot of performers, just people in general, are worried about how to deal with failure or error, especially as it relates to if they fail, it's going to cause their credibility or authority to be lost. So, thinking about your professional career as a horse rider or anything else you've done in your life, can you give us a moment where you failed at something, but you chose not to allow that to impact or affect your credibility and authority, and you pushed forward?
Course, of course, I'm human and I've done mistakes, but I never allowed any kind of mistakes, any kind of fact that was not going to be like I wanted or how I hoped uh, to be a problem for growing up. And I can understand that that can be difficult to understand and probably also to put my words into the life. But if you think about that, from any kind of mistake, you can take a bit of this, a bit of that, and then you can just build something in which you are stronger. So we are all human. We can all make mistakes, and that is not something that we have to be afraid of. I can understand that a lot of people are just worried to make a mistake, so they prefer to stay in a comfort zone, the comfort zone that we were talking about at the beginning. But that is a mistake because they will never be able to prove to themselves their potential, their abilities. And if something is going to be wrong, then whatever, just take the positive part, the lesson that you could learn from it, and then just move forward to which is your goal. Because staying in the comfort zone as something that, yeah, okay, maybe can be safer, but life is only one, and then just live at the best that you can because maybe you could be able to reach something that you never thought about, but just try. And if it's not going to be good, whatever, just change direction. As I said, being able to adapt to new circumstances.
And I was just going to ask you, but you just answered that so perfectly, and I think everything you just said, I think is going to resonate so well with any young listener that we may have, because the next question I was about to ask you is, what advice would you give to any child or teenager that's listening right now, where they feel like, um, they don't necessarily trust themselves, or they're not confident, they're not challenging themselves because they're afraid that they're going to fail. And I think you just answered that so perfectly. So, thank you to that.
I'm happy that I've done it.
I really want to try to keep these conversations at about 30 minutes. So I know we're nearing that point, but I think, once we push this episode out and it becomes available to everybody, people are going to want to learn more about what you're doing, the knowledge that you're sharing. Where can they go to find out more about what you have going on?
They can find me on my website, which is hofmarabuntablog.com.
Okay. And we're going to be sure to put that link to your website in all of the show notes, with the video platforms that this will be on, with the audio or podcast platforms, and then any other social platforms.